Oh my effing god, what did we just see? Possibly one of the best pay-per-views of all time. That is what we are here to discuss, folks. Welcome to BunkaMania Wrestling. I am the giraffe, me, Jeremy Graves. I am joined by Matty Boo, and we are here today to discuss AEW Revolution 2024. We are recording this in theory, about 5 or 6 hours after the show has ended, just from the way time differences work here in the UK and such. We've both seen the entire thing. We've got some post-show notes as well. We're going to be going through everything that occurred. But I will say, before we go any further, if you want to jump ahead to any specific discussion points, you can find chapter markers in the description of this episode, be you watching on YouTube or listening in audio form via your podcast provider of choice. Of which, if you do enjoy the show, why not tell a friend? And if you feel so inclined, hit that subscribe button. So, Matty, I guess, to begin with, AEW Revolution has happened. We all knew this was going to be quite a show. Either way, it was going to be a monumental show from an emotional point of view, but there was a lot of potential going into this show in general. So I suppose to throw the floor to you to begin with, and to actually let you say some words as well for a change, I would just simply ask you general overall thoughts on this show from your perspective.
Overall thoughts was this isn't like other revolutions we've had in the years go by in the near 6-year history, 5-year history we've had of AEW thus far.
God, it is at this point, isn't it?
I mean, no Face of the Revolution match for a start, and I'm kind of glad that's not there. But what it did really, really well was basically pay respects to wrestling in a way, because my main thing about AEW, I can take or leave the weekly shows. We've had discussions, in fact, where for me, all the major stuff just happens in Dynamite. Collision, bless its cotton socks, fantastic wrestling. Great work rate wrestling, but not really a smidge of storyline to really tie it all together. The build for each of these pay-per-views always seems a bit convoluted, a bit slapdash, a bit last minute. But then we reach the pay-per-views themselves, and it almost makes you absolutely loopy, livid, whatever you want to call that. The pay-per-views are always consistently so damn good. So brilliant. We got obviously our mutual friend Harriet. She said, well, I can't really say much about the pay-per-view because I haven't watched the product. And I think I said to a review president, in fact, I said, I don't think it really matters because it's never really about the weekly product. It's about the card itself, and the card itself always seems to be like a super card of just great work rate wrestling. And this is what we got this time. We'll go through it bit by bit, but there wasn't really an entire match here that I said was terrible. Not at all. And then, of course, the one overriding thing that we both share here is the fact the biggest respects of all is to the icon Sting. Yeah. A man who was one of the first wrestlers I grew up idolizing because I was a WCW kid.
Likewise.
I didn't have Skye TV, so I didn't have access to the WWF product at this point. I was raised on the Big Daddy and the Giant Haystacks, and then it was American wrestling. And American wrestling to me was World Championship Wrestling. So I was brought up on Sting, Arn Anderson, very rarely Ric Flair, bizarrely. He was very rarely on the weekly product that I saw on ITV.
Because that would have been WCW Worldwide, correct? That was on ITV?
It would have been, yes. I think he was in the WWF by this point.
Circa 92, 93, he would have been, yeah.
Yeah. I think I started watching WCW around 1990, 1991. And also, most certainly, Rick Rude, who was like the biggest villain to me, as well as Lord Steven Regal. So those were the people I was brought up with. But I was a massive Sting fan because, number one, it was the closest I could get to the Ultimate Warrior. Number two, at least, unlike the Ultimate Warrior, Sting could talk.
Which is ironic, actually, because in the post show media scrum, which I've just been watching some of before we hit the record button, he actually just said, I've never been that great on the mic. It's just like, it's like, buddy, come on.
Have you seen everyone else around you?
All I will say is that promo you did a week ago begs to differ, quite frankly.
And he could do more with the look than most people could at all. And speaking about looks, I've got a thing about a match later on. So there we go.
There you go. But yeah, as for this pay-per-view overall, I know I opened the show by saying, is this one of the best pay-per-views of all time? It is flipping up there, quite frankly, because top to bottom, with some kind of exception bits in thoughts I'll get onto accordingly, but overall, this is one of the strongest pay-per-views. And AEW pay-per-views, like you say, more often than not, are a big hit, that's what I'm trying to say, than a miss. And with what you were saying about the weekly TV, it's sort of like why, to sort of add a little bit of behind-the-scenes talk here, as it were, sort of peek behind the curtain for BunkaMania, I'm always a little bit reticent to sort of talk about the WWE pay-per-view events because I don't watch the weekly product. So it's kind of the reverse of what Harriet sees from the AEW point of view. But I think you should be able to just watch a show. Obviously, if you want to, as it were. You should be able to just watch a show, take it for what it is, and not feel too lost. But when it comes to the build-up for this pay-per-view, overall, I thought it was actually very well done. But I totally see people and reasons that can be given for why it wasn't. But with everything for this show, it just came together and clicked. It was one of those where everything just landed. We've had little pepperings of teasings of where things could go with certain things. And we've got some long-term directions potentially being built very subtly as well. Hopefully some sooner than later, let's be quite frank. But overall, this pay-per-view, for me, absolute home run.
And a lot of the credit here goes towards the fine work rate of the talent involved. It felt like it had a callback, bizarrely enough, because of the way it was throughout the night, because everything was a tribute to Sting or old NWA territory in one form or another.
David Crockett was there on the pre-show doing things with Tony Schiavone.
David Crockett should have been there on commentary with Schiavone and JR just to wrap up a neat little bow, even if he couldn't contribute much. And thank God we had Excalibur to basically do all the heavy lifting here. I absolutely loved the fact that at least we had JR and Tony Schiavone on the desk for that last match, because those were the guys who were around when Sting debuted, and these are the guys who were around when Sting finishes up. So it was a nice full circle in that way.
100%. Which I suppose, since we're talking about Sting, let's sort of change up the format a little bit, as it were. Let's sort of just get on to what ultimately was, and should have been either way, the main event. That being Sting and Darby Allin versus the Young Bucks, and just everything surrounding this. We're just going to make this pretty its own segment, quite frankly. This may go on for a while. Like I say, chapter marks if you want to hear more, hear everything in a different order. But I want to actually go back to before this show, as in even before 0 Hour, because there was a video that aired on the Countdown show, which admittedly I didn't watch this time, but I saw a few people saying they better upload this video on its own on AEW's own YouTube channel. And then I suddenly noticed there was a new video, which was almost like a tribute video to Sting. And I thought, oh, go on, I'll give this a watch. I'll probably like this. I was freaking bawling my eyes out by the end of it, because it was the moment of a realization where I knew this was going to be Sting's last match. This is his last event, everything like that. But this actually really made it hit home for me before the pay-per-view last night. And I was welling up like, I was like a faucet, quite frankly. I was just like someone turned a tap on. I just couldn't stop crying. And then they showed it again on the pre-show, and it's like, oh, I can't watch this again. And I was just gone. And it really added to the emotion. And sometimes you just need that little realization. I was determined to try and stay up all night, again, because it airs overnight in the UK, to be there live. But then it just got to about half an hour before the main show, and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to get a few hours sleep, and I'm going to watch on delay, because I actually want to really enjoy this and not be fighting to stay awake.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy I did that, because this main event, I'm not one to swear too often, but holy fucking shit. What a match. What a spectacle. It began with Ric Flair coming out. You can make of that what you want, folks. I'm just stating it occurred. Then it was announced there would be a guest timekeeper. And then Ricky Steamboat's music hits. Greensboro Coliseum goes mental. And then they randomly cut to the crowd and they say, oh, Magnum TA's there. Scotty Riggs is there. It's like, oh, wow. Like, David Crockett's obviously in the building as well. Like, this is a proper moment.
Yeah.
And AEW have been really good about honoring things before. Like, let's take the Brody Lee tribute show, for example. Like, when they're going to honor something, they will do it right. And I have always have faith that AEW will do that. And this already made you think this is going to be actually genuinely really special. Like, what the heck is going to happen? I don't know. We're about to find out. And then we get the Young Bucks music starting, which is the whole new piano theme there. And they use the Cody Vader, which I laughed so hard at. And they're coming down to the ring. They're being all heelish. And I'm just thinking, this is the right final match. A tornado tag, him and Darby v. the Bucks. You know, sometimes you just need to see it as you're about to watch it. And it just feels like it's all coming together. Then Darby's music hits. He comes out to the ramp. I thought for a second he fell off the stage, but I don't think he did.
No, that was just part of his routine.
There you go. And then everything fades to black. And we cut to a video package. And we see the front of a cinema, a theater, if you will. And it's saying, Sting, the final showtime, as it were. Then we see Sting enter the cinema. He sits down and he's watching a video on the big screen. The curtains draw back. We're getting flashes of images from him being in New Japan, still photos from him in WCW back in the late 80s and whatnot. WCW. All these classic moments, we're kind of reliving and seeing the history of Sting before our eyes. And then the video that Sting is watching ends, the curtains close, and we're just watching Sting process what he has seen. And then he pretty much just says, well, it's time. It's the final showtime. Let's do this. And as soon as he said that, it's like, oh, mate, I'm well up for this now. Let's freaking do this. And then suddenly, we hear his AEW theme play. And out on the stage suddenly appears Surfer Sting from 1988 in full Great American Bash red, white, and blue ring gear. Then suddenly Wolfpack Sting appears. And you're just like, wait, is that his son's? And my immediate thought was, this is so good. Because they got attacked a few weeks ago when they won the tag titles. It's such a wonderful little touch. This is so damn good. And then... Oh, go on.
No. Go on.
So then, at that point, you're wondering, well, he's going to come out now. And then the music fades. And it's like, what are they going to do? And then suddenly, the opening riff to Metallica's Seek and Destroy starts playing. And I'm having callbacks... Look at that, just seeing your notes on the video. I'm having flashbacks to Wembley last year when that played, and I went absolutely mental in that stadium. I was going mental sitting in my living room. This was so damn good. And then they're walking down to the ring. Darby stops Sting, says something to him, and you can see Sting go, okay, sure, yeah, let's carry on. They get in the ring. Sting literally steps in the ring, and the next thing you see, Darby is running at 100 miles an hour. He does a tope through the middle and bottom rope, goes into the Young Bucks, and then the next thing you hear was a commentary table get hit and someone go, shit, on commentary. And it was just on. But before we get to everything that happened in the match itself, I'm going to let you talk about this entrance, because this entrance itself is a fantastic spectacle.
It was absolutely incredible. So you talked about the video package before he makes his entrance. That was emotional. That was incredible. Just watching his highlights. Bizarrely enough, when you saw him face off against the Great Muta and Antonio Inoki, the fact that he actually did face off against these guys in Japan in the Tokyo Dome. I believe it was the Tokyo Dome.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, because people just forget, okay, he was WCW, then WWE, then AEW. People forget that with that NWA, WCW relationship, there was also the talent trade with, I believe, New Japan. Maybe
there were wrestlers going to and from.
Well, yeah. And people had to really step up and prove their worth when in Japan, especially if you're facing off against Inoki, a man who expects nothing less but your absolute 100%, or else he's going to slap the crap out of you.
But also one of the gods of pro wrestling in Japan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And apparently it's an absolute honor or dishonor, depending on the context behind it, to get slapped by Inoki. Because then he's passing on his fighting spirit. If he slaps you under any other circumstances, it's better watch out, mate. You better watch out. But especially if you're dangling around as Spider-Man pulling a trick on him. But yeah, I mean, what a career. What an absolute career. Bit of a damp squib when he was in the WWE because it's then, sorry, you're WCW gone. Yeah. Rewrite history time. That's a bit of a low ebb. But unlike WWE, AEW, man. AEW. Criticize them all you want or lavish them. It does not matter. They absolutely sent the crowd home happy with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also potentially mortified, as we'll get onto, but...
But also... I literally showed my notes. The thing you see just above there is where I had to completely scrub out the fact, oh my God, he's Surface Sting.
Yeah, right.
And then I had to cross that out because, it's his son. But honestly, one of those two sons looks like Sting went back to the past, brought himself back from there as Surface Sting, brought him into the future, and hey, have some fun with me.
It's scary, isn't it? It's so scary.
He looks so much like him. It's so scary. It honestly tricked me. I thought Sting for his last match came out completely done up and somehow rejuvenated and came out as Surface Sting. My Sting from back in the day.
Yeah.
You know? It's absolute feels. But also to go back to that previous package, it's not just a case that he says it's time, it's showtime. The complete change in demeanor when he looked up there, just enjoying the ride, just enjoying like the memories, and then he looks directly to camera, and he turns, and he's just dead-faced looking directly at the camera, and you know it's him staring directly at the EVPs, and it's on.
Yeah,
it's so on.
So good, just so good. So, like I say, this is then when Darby went at full pelt into them and someone on commentary, I think Excalibur went, shit, when they hit the desk. So, to try and sum up a bunch of what occurred, this was a Tornado rules match. So, it meant there were just no rules. It was just anything goes, quite frankly. So, Darby's done that. We then, and pretty much immediately, thanks in part to Sting's sons also getting involved in the action for a bit, we have tables being brought out. There are chairs being brought out, ladders. Then panes of glass.
Oh, God, yeah.
And then as soon as you see glass, I'm just thinking, oh, my God, what are they going to do? And then they moved one of the panes of glass, because there were multiple, onto like a bed of chairs that was set up. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, let's see where this goes. And then the first instance that this glass may come back to bite something is that one of the Jackson brothers was sitting by it, and Sting at this point has got a baseball bat, and he's just wielding it, like just trying to basically decapitate the Bucks. And the Buck moves out the way, and Sting hits the glass, but it doesn't break. So he's got to do it again, then it breaks, and it's like, this ain't just some cheap sugar glass. Like, this is... No. This is tough.
And we absolutely debated whether it was sugar glass or not. And I pretty much wrote my notes, scribbled out, put back again, and then basically I yippee-dippied between them. And I said, at one point, real glass? Somewhere in Japan, Jack Perry is crying a river.
Very fair point, actually, how you mention it. So after that glass moment, the action sort of spills into the crowd. We end up getting by the entrance ramp. This leads to then, I believe, Nick Jackson hitting a Falcon Arrow on Darby through a couple of tables off the stage. Then on the opposite side of the stage, Matthew Jackson, should be correct now, then does a suplex on Sting off the stage through some tables with a bunch of cables on. And that's essentially Sting just taken out for a bit from the match. Yeah. Action goes back to the ring. Darby's trying to sort of do as much as he can. He ends up getting the upper hand a little bit. And he kind of ends up putting Nick Jackson in shot, we'll say, of the pane of glass. And he sets up a gigantic ladder in the middle of the ring. It's freaking insane. He then proceeds to as he does, leap off the ladder, doing a swanton, which we didn't see until the replay, but Nick Jackson was in the way, was then pulled out of the way by Matt Jackson, and you just hear this sound of not only a body just hitting the ground, but the glass shattering. And then the next camera angle you see is a close-up of Darby's back, and you see...
Yeah.
I apologize if this gets really squeamishly graphic, folks. I'm just going to fast forward 20, 30 seconds or something. But you then start to see the blood form on Darby's back, and you're thinking, oh, he's got a few cuts, he'll be all right. There were not a few. There were many.
No, there were
and
loads.
then they show him again about 20 seconds later, and it's like, again, someone just turned a tap on. There is so much blood, and he's now out of the match for a better part of 10 minutes at this point. You can see there are people tending to him in the distance, but they are making very sure you are not going to get a close-up of that camera angle. Very sure.
Yeah, and Jeremy, what he's just said there is the nicest way of putting it, because also with those cuts that they zoomed in on, you can also see just around his shoulder blade, he's also got a bit of glass embedded into his flesh.
I did not see that.
Oh, it's there. Oh, it's very much. It's not obviously not there for the rest of the match, but when you see it and he's rolled up in his back, you can actually see a jagged bit of metal, a jagged bit of glass in an open wound in his back. It is disgusting.
So yeah, as far as body horror goes, that AEW has done some mental stuff, but that is up there, quite frankly. If you want to make like a top videos list or something when it comes to like body horror moments in AEW, that will be up there forevermore. So we then get Sting now being back in the ring and kind of having to go toe-to-toe with the Young Bucks. And he ends up getting powerbombed off the ladder through the table, but instantly gets right back up. And then he sends one of the other Bucks through. Oh no, and then he is then like hip-tossed through another pane of glass that was set up in the corner of the ring. That shatters and goes everywhere. Then this is where things sort of go in a bit of a different direction, because the Bucks cannot put Sting down. He will not quit. So, go on.
Let me break this down into Pokemon stats and effectiveness for you, right?
Okay, please do. Please do. Okay.
I've written these down. Right. Table with electronic cabling in it, effective.
Fair.
Table with nothing on them, ineffective. Table with a little something on it, ineffective. Sugar glass, super effective. Super kick, ineffective. Double super kick, ineffective. A second super kick, effective. Next super kick, ineffective.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was literally like you were watching a superhero film. And you're just seeing the superhero who's basically done the equivalent of going Super Saiyan if you're a Dragon Ball fan. He's just powered up or has gone into like a rage mode in some other things. It's insane. But Nick Jackson goes to grab a title belt, and Steamboat is the guest timekeeper. So he steals the belt back off Nick Jackson. And then Steamboat gets taken out with like a shot from a chair or two, I believe, by Matt Jackson. This then leads, in the background, we can see to Ric Flair rolling in the ring. And at this point, I'm thinking, oh my God, what is about to happen? Please, please. And what they did, now I want to say, like, full disclosure on my part, I didn't want Ric Flair to be involved in this in any way, partly because of how he looked on Dynamite, and I thought he was going to keel over. But what they did actually was very smart. Well, to a point. They actually got him in a role where he went over to check on Sting, the Bucks got back in the ring, and they were threatening to just hit Sting with a chair. And Flair's going, no, I won't let you do it. Actually, I can tell you what he said because I was wearing headphones watching the show. So I got a better listen. He literally said to them, fuck off. I laughed so hard.
Also, Jeremy's editing this, so he can edit out his own swears.
I'm leaving that in. Stop that. You know, this is all being left in. We've got to do it for dramatic effect. And Flair is basically saying that, no, I'm not going to let you. And he's effectively covering up Sting to protect him. It's such a simple role. I love that.
It is. And yeah, I even by doing that, I felt that he was about to have a cardiac arrest because he went beetroot purple You know when
Yeah.
as bad as a car crash it was watching him do his last match, and he was like the same shade as his ring attire the whole time. There was a bit of this going on when he was bent over Sting and telling talk to the Young Bucks. He was such a weird color, such a weird color. I was really concerned, and I don't even like Ric Flair that much.
And this was probably emphasized more when he then got a double super kick to the face.
True.
Though I will say, I did notice he landed on the glass. And I think during the match, a doctor was having a look at something, because there was a moment when the doctor went over to him with a towel of some kind. So I'm hoping maybe he just got like a cut from some glass. But part of me was thinking, oh God, what's happened?
You know what's happened. He's gone and bladed.
Probably. Who knows?
He's Ric Flair, and it's what he does.
So this then leads to some more sort of super kicks. Now, this is kind of at the point, like we were saying, where Sting just like what's effective and ineffective. But then we were getting callbacks to other things tangentially related to Sting's career. So, Ric Flair's retirement match at Mania 24 with the whole "I'm sorry, I love you" thing. The Young Bucks do a parody of that and just shout to him and make sure that the camera's on them when they do it as well. They say, quote, "We're not sorry, we hate you." Then they kick him, but Sting just doesn't go down. He just kind of looks up to the sky, looks back at them, and then he just does a death drop on Matt after. He's kicking out of the EVP triggers, formerly known as the BTE trigger. He gets a second one, then kicks out at one and just laughs at them. It's so good. The Young Bucks don't know what's going on. It's another double super kick. They go for the TK driver, sort of like their indie taker type thing. And at this point, I believe it was Nick was then sent through Darby miraculously is alive, we discover. Nick then gets sent through a table on the outside, inches away from Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And then Darby then I think then Sting does a coffin drop. Sorry, does a death drop. I'm getting my words mixed up now. But Matt Jackson kicks out at 2. This then leads to the double team combo of Darby doing a coffin drop, Sting then picking up Nick, and then locking in the... Oh, no, that was it. Sting had Nick's legs. That's what it was. Or Matt's legs.
Yeah.
And Darby does a coffin drop with his back covered in blood all over him.
Yeah.
And then he turns him over, having held his legs, that being Sting, locks in the Scorpion Deathlock. You're wondering what's going to happen now. Is this it? And Matt Jackson taps. Your winners and still tag team champions, Sting and Darby Allin. My note to end this was simply, and this is my note now, not me quoting, fucking insane, but incredible.
Absolutely. It could only end this way. I will give some credit to the character work being done by the Jacksons. I don't call them Young Bucks anymore because they're not young. I actually call them in my notes the EVP Bucks. But I like the difference in character, the slight differences between Nicholas and Matthew, because Matthew is the level-headed one. They're both still dickheads. It's just that Matthew is the one who's a little bit more corporate, a little bit more level-headed. Nicholas is the one who will fly off the handle. He'll go berserk. He will literally lose his rag, and it has to be Matthew who talks him down from basically having a massive hissy fit. It's just the little things between the pair of them that really like builds what they're trying to do. You got the two sides of what a big corporate evil boss is. Let's not mention the guy's name. You know what I'm talking about. It's the two equal sides of the same corporate chain. But it's so interesting to watch the pair of them together, because we've seen Young Bucks matches. We've seen what they've been like when they're happy-go-lucky dickheads or babyface dickheads. Don't matter what they are. The Young Bucks are always dickheads. But this new side to them is so interesting. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it is really, really good. And this match was phenomenal. As far as a final match goes, you probably knew Sting was going to do something a bit insane. But everything about this channeled how much of a fighting spirit Sting as an entity has had in his career. and just everything he's gone through, like still doing ridiculous stuff at the age that he is at, but wanting to go out on a big high. But also fundamentally, he's retired undefeated in AEW and as a tag team champion. And we'll get onto the state of the tag team titles in a minute because that has been addressed after the show and whatnot. But then the way the show goes off the air, we see everyone just basking in the moment. There are tears in eyes. I'm crying sitting on my sofa. Just, it's an emotional high that potentially we may never get again in AEW. This might be the pinnacle of genuine emotional highs from the perspective of a retirement and stuff. It is that damn good. We're getting some work on the mic now. Darby kind of says, show some love for Sting. And then you kind of also hear, we've got 3 minutes till we go off the air, implying, all right, Sting, what are you going to do? Let's make this work. And Sting gets on the mic. He thanks everyone. He said he wanted this to be a night that wrestling won't forget, but also it's a night he will never forget. And the crowd is just giving him so much love. And you can tell he keeps getting cues of, you got to wrap it up. You got to wrap it up. And the way it is wrapped up is Darby says something to him, and then Sting literally says, I'm getting cues. Bear with me a moment. And the show goes off the air. It's just like...
We got a slight difference of opinion about how this should have been handled. So for me, they should have just basked in the audience until they rolled to the end. None of this 3-minute stuff. They should have just soaked it in, let the audience rain down the Sting chants, just hold up their titles, bask in it, fade to black. Then Sting should have done his address to the crowd after that.
Kind of just make it a quote-unquote off-air thing.
Yeah, we got it all in full on YouTube anyway as an addition, and that's basically a nice thing for everyone to witness. Yeah. So that's how they should have done it. None of this. Let them talk on the mic at the end of the pay-per-view, knowing full well they haven't got much time left. That was badly handled.
I agree, and this is the one. This is the big thing on the show for me. There's another thing I'll get to a bit later, probably, depending how I'm feeling when we're talking about it. But this is probably the one black mark on this segment, if you will.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a complete experience, this entire Sting Darby thing. Because it just faded to black, and it's like, oh, really? Really? Like, you've gone off the air? But then, funnily enough, this was actually brought up during the media scrum, and Tony Khan's attitude to it, not to say he dismissed it, because I think it was kind of brought up, but he sort of mentioned in passing, like, hey, everyone, you're all here, the media, like, you saw what happened. And the great thing is, with the power of, like, YouTube now and stuff, we can literally have we can have what happened off the air up on YouTube for free, like, pretty darn quickly.
Which is exactly what they did. Exactly. I will state that the difference of opinion me and Jeremy had is Jeremy, you said to me before recording, the whole thing should have been played out on the pay-per-view, the whole speech, whereas I reckon just let them soak in the adulation of the crowd, cut to black, then have the speech out and put out on YouTube for everyone to see. That's the small thing. We both agree about how it was handled. Was a bit...
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, what I would have preferred was just from the pay-per-view broadcast perspective purely, I would have just preferred a more definitive ending. Because it literally felt like, oh, well, hang on a second, we'll be right back. And it's like, end of broadcast. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like that. Exactly. Yeah. But that aside, you can see the whole thing on YouTube, so that's all cool. But yeah, at the time I was like, wait, what? You can't do this to me. Are you kidding?
It felt very WW out of time.
I mean,
ironically.
It's appropriately, you could say,
Yeah. But in the wrong side, we're talking about pay-per-view. Oh, let's replay the whole thing for everyone to watch for free on Nitro sort of thing, which was never the right call, but never mind.
Yeah. Which is actually what I think Tony referenced. He said, back in the old days, you would have had to wait until the next TV show to see what happened off the air. Now we can just upload it on YouTube.
Yeah.
So I take that point. Again, minor detail, so we're not going to brush on it much longer, as it were, but worth noting. But either way, this entire thing, the moment we just set aside, was phenomenal. And I loved it. This was so damn good. And I don't think it could have gone any better, sans, people nearly dying, if you could have tried.
There's something to be said about the Sting coming out to Seek and Destroy that just gets me. Mm-hmm. It got me at All In. bizarrely, I had a really emotional response. It was the one thing throughout the whole of the card that I actually teared up for. Just this was the first and now only time I'm ever going to see Sting live and in person. And then it all came again when he came out to Seek and Destroy on his retirement match. Sting was my guy. And that's why I'm ending it on. I think it was beautiful.
Indeed. And to sort of mention this quickly as well, so we can keep this all kind of in one framework of time and such. When it comes to some notes after the fact from the media scrum, because Sting and Darby did make an appearance there, to which Darby mainly just said, I'm just here to show you I'm alive, quite frankly. But yeah, he's going to need a lot of stitches on his back and such. But Sting actually mentioned in the media scrum that he had like a meeting with the Bucks backstage, seemingly before they went to the media scrum, and literally told them this is one of his top 3 matches ever. And that's saying something.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder what the other 2 in the conversation are, but that's where Sting holds it in his personal regard. So that is phenomenal. In terms of what is next for Sting, nothing specific was mentioned, but there were kind of, well, let me clarify. Sting himself said, I don't see me being as someone like a manager or similar like that, but perhaps still having a role within AEW in some form. He said he will have he will talk to Toni, have a conversation, but where he fits in, he doesn't necessarily know.
He's got to be a great backhanding backstage.
I agree. Honestly, I would like to see him be an on-screen GM. Because I think because there's a lot of time where it's like Tony Khan has announced, and I kind of almost feel like if you have an actual conduit to link that to someone, where like Sting is the one that's talking to Tony Khan, or maybe Sting has kind of said, oh, you know what I've just decided? Tony Khan's just decided this. It might be an interesting dynamic. Not something you'd see every week, but, you know, in particular situations, perhaps.
Yeah, now the GM role is actually a thing that does exist in Ring of Honor. Stokely Hathaway was the heel GM. I don't know why they did this. It's a bit weird. It was a bit bipolar, really. Stokely Hathaway was a heel GM, and oh god, I've forgotten his name. Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin was the babyface GM, and they had them both running the board of Ring of Honor. So there is a call for that. What you say? Now that you're saying it, I might be on board with Sting being a general manager, but would he be Sting or would he be Steve Borden?
I think you could have him be Sting. And that's the thing, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the building. You could just record all of his stuff from elsewhere. He just appears on video.
You mean absolutely full-on WWE president Jack literally. It up?
Yeah, literally. Could be good fun. And also, in terms of what's next for Darby, pending him being cleared and obviously being fine and such, but at the Big Business Dynamite, which is only a couple of weeks away now, that 13th of March show, he will be facing one-on-one Jay White. To which Darby didn't know this because Tony Khan had already announced it. So he was told live in the press conference, and his reaction was, oh, shit.
You're having a laugh. But then again, Tony Khan does have a prerequisite to announce matches without thinking it through.
I think it's trying to give an indication of, right, Darby's going off on his own now, and even Darby kind of acknowledged this. It's like, right, I've had Sting with me for the past 3 years. So the first element of my next chapter is facing Jay White. Talk about a step-up type thing. So
absolutely.
We will see how that progresses. But yeah, that sort of talk on I say all the talk, forgive the phrasing, but that is the Sting, that's the main event, which is what it should have been. And I'm really glad it was ultimately, because earlier in the show, which conveniently links us on to 0 Hour talk now, during 0 Hour, the way it was being phrased, the 3-way title match was being mentioned in the rundown as the main event a couple of times. So I was a little bit confused as to what's closing the show, but ultimately I would have taken whatever they would have given, quite frankly. In terms of 0 Hour, though, there were 2 matches on this pre-show. There was a 12-man tag match that involved the Bang Bang Scissor Gang against, let's see if I can remember this off the top of my head, because I didn't actually write it down. It was Jeff Jarrett, Jay Lethal, Satnam Singh, Willie Mack.
Private Party.
Oh, and Private Party, that was it, yeah. This was, you know what, fun match, just a good kind of thing to get the crowd going, as it were, of which a lot of people were in for that pre-show, which was great to see.
Yeah.
And the kind of storyline beats, if you want to call it that occurred during this, Max Caster's rap kind of went a bit AWOL. He was going really, really good and effectively fumbled the last line.
Which was quite deliberate.
Very, very deliberate. And then after the Bang Bang Scissor Gang had won the match, as it were, this then led to Jay White getting on the microphone, kind of addressing the crowd a little bit, getting them hyped for the show. And he also just kind of casually mentioned, like, Max, you could have done a bit better on that rap. You know, I could think of some other people that could probably, have not fumbled it. And you could see in the background Max Caster being like, the heck, dude? Like, what? What are you on? So we're getting just those little bit of teasers that at some point this is going to blow. And I reckon it's going to be sooner than later.
The stuff between Jay and Max was going on throughout the whole match. If you could keep a beady eye on them, like Max was like off his game. Like whenever you see him in the corner, was off his game the whole time. They were going through the process, and I think Anthony Bones is way more into being in the Bang Bang Scissor Gang than Max is.
Yeah.
And Billy Gunn just seems to be happy to be reunited with his two boys again. Whereas Max is just, he's like, where do I fit in all of this? Whereas Jay knows, gotcha. Because I don't think Jay is a babyface. I don't think he is at all.
No, not at all.
That entire spiel that you ran through, when he was going on doing the cheap plug after cheap plug after cheap plug, you can see the sassy undertone like peppered in throughout that entire thing. He's just playing the game, and we all know it, and we can all see it. But it's so interesting seeing this dynamic. Now, the reasons why they all formed a super faction in the first place seems to have been entirely forgotten about. But I will say that both teams kind of need a refresh anyway. Yeah. So I would love to see what happens off the back of this. Is Jay White going to splinter off from the whole lot of them? What's going on with Max Caster? Is Max Caster going to have an entirely new gimmick change? Because that's what it seems we're heading towards. He seems to be losing the rapper gimmick. Like gradually, he's choking on his raps. He's literally getting really, really frazzled over himself and his place and everything. It's all being done really subtly and gradually, and that is something AEW is very good at. So long as they don't drop the ball or just simply forget this exists at all entirely, because they have done both. They have pivoted a lot.
Yeah, and it was announced during the main show that the next pay-per-view outing from AEW will be, I think it's around April 21st or so, and it's called AEW Dynasty, however you want to pronounce it. So one would assume is come that Dynasty show, we're probably going to get in some form Acclaimed versus the Bullet Club, the Bang Bang Gang, whatever they're actually called now. And it wouldn't surprise me if the long-term direction is to potentially unify those two six-man belts, because they don't need both, quite frankly.
No.
Because at the moment, the trios titles are all on ice, literally.
Yeah. For sure. They need to merge them. To be fair, do we even... I like the rank coming. Sorry, Jeremy.
Okay, I'll buckle in. I've got a drink ready. I'm buckling in.
Why do we need Ring of Honor? Why? Why does it exist in an entity? Just whatever's going on with it is very half-assed. You want work rate, which is what a lot of people have been saying about these Ring of Honor pay-per-views, that you kind of got it with the AEW pay-per-views. It's so weird. It's so daft. In my mind's eye, if I'm Tony Khan, I would make Ring of Honor purely the feeder system, the NXT for AEW. And it does work. People that you've got no time for AEW get sent to Ring of Honor, perfect their craft, whilst also going off and doing the independents, which a lot of them do anyway, like Willow Nightingale, like Abaddon. Ironically, that's where Nyla Rose is now in Ring of Honor, and that's a waste. That's an utter waste. Yep. Why is she not in the main card? Holy hell, what are we doing?
Do you know what I will say? Sorry to just cut you off for a second there. I think this might also, not to, again, cut off your rant entirely here, but I'm thinking this might actually be worth having a topic as its own podcast, because when I went to Forbidden Door last year, not a flex, just saying because it's context, but at the two Collision shows I went to, there were Ring of Honor tapings after.
Yeah.
And I think that actually would be relevant to the discussion of this, to put into a different perspective, or to add to the perspective of how Ring of Honor fits into the AEW landscape. So please do continue. But I think it might be worth parking a lot of this conversation for a separate show, because I actually think I think it's worth actually doing a separate thing on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we'll if we do that, I will absolutely spill my guts about that. But where Ring of Honor exists in the whole hierarchy right now, you've got their triple belts, which is mired in a faction with the other belts. It's just so many belts, and you're lost in the sea of belts. You've got the Ring of Honor Championship, which Claudio Castagnoli, oh God, I will get his name.
Just say Claudio, it's far easier.
Yeah, Claudio. Swiss Toni. He did perfectly when he was Ring of Honor champion. Eddie Kingston would be a fantastic champion if it weren't for the fact it's now lost in the mire of the Continental Crown. You know, it seems to be absolved. Toni Khan, do something with Ring of Honor. I beg you. Whether make it your feeder system, because this is personal bias. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching.
I can't say I do. I mean, from what I hear, the people that watch it genuinely enjoy it.
I did enjoy it. I watched the first few episodes of Ring of Honor, and I genuinely enjoyed what I saw because it gave people that had no screen time in AEW a chance to shine. Wheeler Yuta became a heel, like a fully fledged heel in Ring of Honor, being a dickhead pure champion. And it was beautiful to see. Absolutely fantastic watching him be more and more of an utter dick. It was beautiful. But once I realized there is no ramifications of what's happening with Ring of Honor as opposed to its overall hierarchy over on AEW, I just lost interest. And it again, your Ring of Honor tag championships, once they went over to Adam Cole and MJF, again got lost in a much bigger picture, which was the friendship / dissolution of MJF and Adam Cole. They're literally, to quote Hulk Hogan, they're just a trinket you put on a Christmas tree, and that Christmas tree is Tony Khan's. You know, it does need some more. It does need a clearer role, like I say, within the landscape of AEW. Personal bias. Ring of Honor now should be the feeder system. You send the people that are too young and inexperienced, give them some veterans to fight off against, and build their clout there. Then you bring them over to the main roster, over to AEW. But as you say, this is a much bigger topic of conversation for another show. But I don't get it. I really don't get it. And it's a rant that's been building within me for a long time now.
Well, in a weird way, that kind of tangentially links into what we're going to talk about next, because the other match on 0 Hour was a women's tag team match. This involved Willow Nightingale and Kris Statlander defeating Julia Hart and Skye Blue after Willow got the pin on Skye Blue. But afterwards, it was very clear that you saw Willow looking at Julia. So one assumes that Julia's next challenger is going to be Willow, which I am all for because Willow's amazing. Also, I will say it now, this tag match was far better than the women's title match on the main show. Yes,
and very few botches, unlike the one-on-one match between Willow and Statlander in the last pay-per-view. But also, people seem to forget that not only was Skye Blue misted and turned evil by Julia, so was Willow.
But the purity and goodness of Willow shone through and voided all the darkness. That's my headcanon anyway.
There was a time on Instagram where Skye Blue and Willow Nightingale started like saying, "Oh, darkness. Oh, hello, darkness, my old friend." And the two of them looking all serious with their eye makeup. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm there for that. Let's turn these pure, lovely ladies into big, evil slayers. Let's do that. And then they just dropped it with Willow. And I was very sad because I thought Willow would have been very good as a goth.
I don't disagree, honestly. But like I said, this match was actually really good fun. Crowd are into it. Just really, really good fun. And like I say, this may come back in conversation during the women's title match, but really fun tag match. Good to see Julia wrestling because I think she's been out with an injury recently, which is why we've not seen her wrestle for a while.
It's a case of nothing really could have been done with her. The best thing you could have done was just let her heal. And it sounds like she's clear to wrestle, clearly, because look at the stuff she did during that match. But yeah, it was one of those things of just give her time. Just give her a little bit of time. This is a storyline that's just been brewing in the 0 hours and buried in the, I think it's the collisions.
The collision and rampages of the world.
Yeah, basically, which is what the 0 hours basically for, is to give the people that don't get the main, well, they are main roster, but the main card treatment a chance to shine. Look, I'll make a point. I literally said in my notes in large letters, Hook is now all main card because he turned up on the main card and not the pre-show. But we'll talk about that later.
Exactly. And you know what? That's a good moment to move on to the main show. Of which I will say as a thought, I forgot to mention it earlier, this show flew by.
It really
Like,
did.
literally. Sometimes AEW pay-per-views, while being excellent, can feel like they drag. But this show flew by overall. So really, really good to see. But the opening match, as was revealed on 0 Hour, was for the TNT title. It was Christian Cage defending against Daniel Garcia. Really, really fun match. The crowd loved Garcia, quite frankly. And some of the big story beats from the match were as follows. Early on, Christian Cage faked a foot injury, leading to him getting the advantage with an old school, like, thumb to the eye type thing. Then he was wanting to try and get a count-out victory for a good few minutes. He was determined to win by count-out and retain his title through dastardly means. But Garcia was able to come back into things. And then, ironically, despite Christian faking the injury, Daniel Garcia actually started working on his legs, and his leg was actually injured, which I thought was a nice little story beat in that. I really, really like that. Another big moment. Oh, go on. Sorry.
No, carry on.
I thought you were going to talk. That's why I stopped then.
No, I was stifling a.
There, gotcha. So Christian at that point, well, later on, then slingshotted. He did a slingshot on Garcia into the corner. I'll get around it that way, and then got the ref's attention, leading to Kill Switch, the former Luchasaurus, choke slamming Garcia, and then. This then led to basically Garcia being attacked once again, but then being able to kick out. So skullduggery happening all around the place. That then led to Daddy Magic randomly coming out, who we were told was attacked on Collision the night before. I did not see Collision in this instance because I needed a day off. And then he fought Kill Switch to the back. Christian went for a spear, but his foot gave out, leading to Garcia to hitting a pile driver for one of the closest 2 counts you will see on this show.
One of 2 close. We'll talk about something else later. Sorry. Continue your train of thought.
That's cool. I've got one more point then. So then, after a few more close near falls, Shayna Wayne, aka Mother Wayne, distracts the ref. Nick Wayne attacks Garcia, and then as he's trying to pick up, he distracts Garcia as he's trying to pick up Christian from the mat, having hit a move. This allows Christian to hit the kill switch and get the 3 to retain the title. Really, really fun opener. And yeah, Garcia looking great here. And following that promo from a week or 2 ago, his star continues to rise.
You've made some really, really valid points. I wish I could care. And that's a sad thing to say.
Fair.
Because it was a foregone conclusion, unfortunately. The work rate was fantastic. It was a brilliant match. Christian continues to be just great, considering this was a man we all wrote off several years ago. He's just great at what he does. The fact that we all knew it was going to be a foregone conclusion, there was no way Garcia was ever going to win the title. We're obviously going to be building towards Edge definitively winning that title from Christian at some point.
I reckon they're doing a Canadian tour soon. I think they've got a Toronto stop, so I see it being there on one of the TV shows.
Literally, the main things I could take away from this is great match from both guys. Garcia is a huge star in the rating. He literally just needs to get to that next step. Thankfully, he's now well away from Jericho, so that that roadblock is well and truly out of his way now. Thank God. He needs
Sports
to be
entertainer.
He needs to be in the Blackpool Combat Club. He should have been a long time ago.
Yeah, it's the next step, isn't it? But When is a different question.
Yeah, the two main points I can add to what you've already succinctly said is he had some fantastic trousers, and he has a great arsenal of crotch-based offense.
I can't follow that, so I'm just going to move on. The next match on the card was for the Continental Crown. It was Bryan Danielson against Eddie Kingston. What was really fun about this, to sort of talk about the pre-match, if you will, was we got a few little changes to the presentation of the Continental Classic, because we were told at the beginning of the match there are now designated rules for Continental Crown title matches, invoking what we saw during the tournament in December, in that, well, first of all, the time limit is 60 minutes, makes sense, but also everyone is barred from ringside, a la what we saw during the Continental Crown, the tournament, sorry. And also, as Excalibur said, so what you saw in the last match will not happen in this match.
No. What they've done here is, this is absolutely, where's the Ring of Honor pure title is for the technical based stuff. The Continental Crown, which, by the way, I love the idea in general. My main argument is that the Continental Crown should be the equivalent of the Money in the Bank or the G1 Classic. It should be the thing that elevates you to the top tier, the absolute top tier. It is your big brass ring that gets you to world heavyweight status. That's my point. It should never be a title. But I love the idea, because what it has essentially done is it's brought strong style to AEW proper. Yeah. You've got a time limit. You've got to adhere to that time limit. The people that are taking part in the Continental Classics at the moment, the Danielsons, most definitely the Kingstons and that, they live and breathe strong style. And what we got is a huge, I literally wrote it through, a huge strong style match in which both men could hard sell in an empty warehouse with only a single tin of pedigree chum between them. That's literally what I wrote in my notes, because the selling between both of these guys were absolutely incredible, both in the matter of the blows that they took at each other, and the fact that they both visually sold the damage that was being done to each other because of the type of match they were indulging in. It was not hardcore. It was literal sheer physical brutality.
Definitely. And another element of the presentation was that sometimes you get like pre-match comments from wrestlers and stuff, but in this instance, we didn't, but we got the comments via two other people, because the backstage reporters, Lexi Nair and Renee Paquette, actually effectively delivered the thoughts of Bryan Danielson and Eddie Kingston before they walked out, which was, again, a nice little touch, because you could see them warming up and psyching themselves up in the background. It's like, look, don't talk to me. This is how I'm feeling. And it was just another little thing. And the first big moment of the match, I say big moment, but kind of to add to what you were saying about strong style, was Danielson sort of accidentally kicked Eddie on the knee. And Eddie was like, no, that's fine. Kick me again. Oh, that really hurt. Okay, do you want to do it again? Oh, you are? Okay, fine. So the knee kind of came into play. And then he was chopping Bryan Danielson a heck of a lot. Ultimately, he chopped the ring post, that being Eddie Kingston, leading to Danielson then attacking the right arm, meaning Kingston couldn't do chops anymore. So such simple stuff. Now, this becomes a big focus of the match, because Eddie's unable to deliver much of his usual offense, because that's what he does, because of the weakened arm. Ultimately, Bryan's on the verge of winning, but the way I've put it, the will of the fans, because that's basically what it was, gave Eddie the energy he needed to counter a Busaiku knee from Danielson, using, kind of just blocking it, almost like a barrier, if you will. Then he was able to hit, I want to say he hit a giant lariat, I think it was, or a back fist using his other arm. That kind of stunned Danielson, leading to a power bomb with a high stack pin to get the pinfall and retain the title. Which, I love Kingston being champion. I was convinced Danielson was going to win this. I just had a feeling of, you know what? This feels like it could be a time. But I really, really enjoyed the match. And there's a little post-match, which we'll get onto in a second. But I really enjoyed this match. And the crowd for this were lapping it up.
It felt like an advertisement towards New Japan between these two men. It was 100% Danielson literally giving Kingston the clout, which Kingston already started by taking part in the G1 and showing what he could do and showing his respects to all the competitors along the way. This was Daniel's idea of, right, look at this guy. Look at this guy who I'm calling a bum. Look how he's literally proven me wrong in front of all of you. This guy could be a fantastic asset to any promotion he works for. Look at him. And it was incredible. It shows that, give or take, whatever you say about Danielson and what other people think of Danielson backstage in AEW these days, what he isn't is selfish. What Danielson is if he truly 100 believes in somebody, he will put them over. And considering all the stuff that we've heard that both Kingston and Danielson have said about one another, whether it is true or not, what is absolutely undeniable is what was put in front of us. And what was put in front of us was an absolute clinic in, like, storytelling. They were putting out, like, wrestling theatre in front of us for every reason that you put out just now. It was incredible. One of my top matches of the entire card, in fact.
Agreed, completely. And after the match, a big thing about this was that win or lose, there was going to be a handshake. And Danielson teased he wasn't going to a couple of times, but it ultimately did. And the part that almost made it a little bit extra cherry on top was after he shook hands and kind of said, yeah, all right, you're really damn good. Let me raise your hand. He goes to raise the hand, to raise the arm that he had been working on during the match. And Eddie's like, ah! And then makes him do the other arm. Yeah.
Because he's still selling, because they're still in that warehouse trying to shift that one tin of pedigree chum. That's slightly gone out of date.
Yeah, and then you could also see, like, from the camera angle ahead, you could also see Danielson, like, egging on the fans to really give Eddie some love. Yeah. So the way I describe it is this feud is over, as it were. And I'm kind of sad because it's been phenomenal.
I literally said that you can't really go any further than this. If you do go further than this, the stipulation is they have to kiss in the middle of the ring. That's it.
Right, yeah. Literally.
So, yeah, no, nothing much else to say about it. It was fantastic. It's up there with some of the best Japanese strong style wrestling I've seen. So, yeah, loved it.
Next up, we got an 8-man scramble, as it were, which featured, in no particular order, Hook, Powerhouse Hobbs, Lance Archer, Magnus from CMLL, Brian Cage, Wardlow, Dante Martin, and Chris Jericho. So this was originally going to be the Meat Madness match that was advertised a few weeks back, and then seemingly due to some basically lack of communication meant that not everyone knew that certain people were injured, so this became a scramble. But the key detail, which I really liked, and this is now coming back to an earlier point you made, when you said that the Face of the Revolution ladder match wasn't involved in this match, the winner will get a world title match.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense the way they've done this. And the fact people could qualify for it still, it makes total sense. And overall, fun match.
Yes, I absolutely loved it. My first thought immediately, because you know me, I'm pure chaos, is they announced it as an 8-man scramble, and they should have made it 12, because that way, that's how you fit an entire set of eggs in one carton. In a dozen, you know. But what we got instead, we didn't get Meatball Madness, Jeremy. We didn't get Meatball Madness. We didn't get Meat Madness. I literally just trampled over my own joke there. But that's fine, because what we had was a glorious set of meatball marinara, right? And everyone else around the meat was the spaghetti that ties it all together. So, yeah, what we had was a strong sense of spaghetti and meatballs, and I lapped it all up.
Yeah, this match started out, like I say, as the Meat Madness, if you will, so the big dudes of the match. And then it became action involving Jericho and Hook and Dante and Magnus. Those were kind of the pairings that we had, which amusingly, Taz then called Mini Meat.
Mini Meat. So, yeah, just so we're clear, right? So the meatballs were Lance Hoyt and Powerhouse Hobbs and Wardlow and all of that. Yeah. And then the spaghetti, of course, was Hook, Jericho, Magnus.
Yeah. There you go.
I love that we had the best of both styles with a little bit of Hook. Hook went to the top.
Yeah, which even Taz was like, what? He doesn't do that.
Absolutely mental. And also, kudos to Hook, who made it on the main card.
There you go. There you go. Do you know, one moment in this match, which I don't think I've ever seen, or if I have, I just didn't expect it. We got a stereo lion sold by Jericho and Magnus on Lance Archer. They did it at the same time and like landed correctly. It was like, that looked really cool.
It was
like
great.
Fair play.
It was absolutely great. It was the best marriage between lightweights and middleweights, heavyweights. It was a really fun match. And as you say, now there's actual stakes behind that. It makes sense why it even existed. It wasn't just a showcase match. There was actual stakes involved in that as well. So
I do have one question though.
Go on,
if I may. There was a really random moment in this match, which I don't think anyone has an answer for. And it did get referenced later by Taz once again. Because Hobbs and Jericho are fighting on the outside. And Hobbs like kind of moves to one side of the area and he's going to run at Jericho. And suddenly Jericho like turns around, hits Hobbs with something, and there's smoke. And it turns out Jericho used a fog machine to hit Hobbs with. And I'm just like, what?
Yes, I was actually making a bacon sandwich while this was going on because it was still breakfast time when this was going on. And so we're going to talk about meat. I might as well cook some while we're at it. And Jericho, Taz was just going on about this smoke machine for like a good 2 matches after that, I believe. Because, oh man, I'm still breathing in the smoke, man. And it was like, it took them by surprise as well. I don't know if that was planned.
I don't know, but I also want to know, why is there a fog machine at ringside?
I mean, if it's by Taz, maybe they wanted to bring back his WWF entrance when he used to just breathe in his own smoke, because that happened.
You're not wrong. So the way the match ultimately unfolds, it comes down ultimately to Dante and Lance Archer. Archer is about to get the win, but then Wardlow breaks up the pin, throws Archer to the outside. Hook, who throughout the match we had seen he'd been able to get the red rum on a few times on Wardlow at this point, was able to lock it in again, but Wardlow manages to overpower him, throws him to the outside. Wardlow then hits a big powerbomb on Dante for the win, securing a future world title match, which I think was the logical way to go based on the excellent promo he had done a few weeks ago. And also from the storyline, they're still gradually teasing that Adam Cole kind of keeps mentioning of Wardlow will become champion, then will give the belt to me.
Yeah, I pretty much, because on my notes, I try and peg down who I think it's their matches to win. I've had a bit of a success right here. I literally wrote underneath main card Hook, I said, I think Wardlow's going to win this one because I think this is his match to win. They needed this was about building up the Undisputed Kingdom. They needed some extra clout because at the moment their trump card is in a wheelchair. So they needed some extra added clout to their arsenal. I mean, the Ring of Honor Tag Championships, bless the cotton socks, just isn't going to be enough to elevate it. For a match that we're going to see later on, I have opinions on, but Wardlow is your biggest name in AEW outside of Adam Cole. Not to diminish anyone else in that faction, but Wardlow is your biggest trump card in the whole thing. He needed this win, and I'm glad it was him that won it. So we got a genuine threat now towards, I'm guessing it's Samoa Joe's.
It's in the future. We don't have a date for it, but yeah, that is in theory the next one of the next world title matches, if you will. And you mentioned adding some clout to the Undisputed Kingdom. That's a perfect segue to the next match because it was Orange Cassidy defending the international title against Roderick Strong. And to cut to the end, as it were, immediately Roderick Strong came out on top.
Absolutely.
So really, really good. Also, this is a tangent and a half, but it's something I've been meaning to say on podcasts and I kept forgetting. So again, going back in time, when I went to sort of like Forbidden Door time last year and I got to go to a Dynamite and whatnot, I didn't realize Orange Cassidy had pyro during his entrances. Because the way they showed it on TV, you always just saw like a little puff of smoke.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really clear. And I remembered when I first saw it, and it's what I called lazy pyro. It's just like, it's so perfect. Why don't they show this on TV? And every time I see it, I keep forgetting to bring it up on a podcast. They actually showed it on the show.
They showed it all in. When we were at All In, you had a little blip of it as they got down, but it was so small we barely
Yeah.
even noticed its existence because we were all too busy looking at the screens and looking at the dismembered body of Wheeler Yuta.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
It's so minimal, you almost forget that it's there, and it's so perfect for Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy, by the way, is a person who the best comparison I can make to him is, you know, when you got ragdoll physics in a video game, and then for whatever reason, they just glitch out and just start to twitch into life and stuff like that. So Orange Cassidy is the equivalent of a character, of a player who gets wasted in Grand Theft Auto 5 and for whatever reason just glitches out of the Matrix and forgets that he's supposed to be dead.
I mean, it's not a bad comparison, in fairness.
No, literally. I mean, it's perfect for a guy who's literally just been torn down asunder so much, which you actually forget because he sells it so well and is naturally lazy anyway, that this is the story that Orange Cassidy has now told twice on both of his international title reigns. The more matches he's had, the more broken down his body has been. I think it's been told better in his first reign than it is for this. I will also add it was 100% the right call to take the title off of Orange Cassidy, and then he can start focusing on other things. Because he needs to heal, but also someone else needs that title to elevate themselves. Was it meant to be Roddy Strong? I don't know. But again, it's not so much about Roddy Strong. It is about the faction that he represents.
Exactly.
And of course, something else happens at the end of the match. I don't know if you want to get into it right now.
We'll get into that in a minute, actually. Yeah, we'll get into it in a minute.
But yeah, another interesting facet in all of this is about to come along as well.
Indeed, and another facet, good word actually, facet to this as well, is that when Roddy came out, he came out with the Kingdom, Taven and Bennett, and he actually sent them to the back. And this added into a storyline set up during 0 Hour, where there was an interview backstage, and Orange told all of the best friends to stay backstage because he hates seeing his friends getting hurt because of him. So we literally got a one-on-one match between them, despite all of the skullduggery we've been seeing in the past 2 months now leading up to this match. But either way, if you're a fan of backbreakers, if you want the equivalent of, I don't know, counting a number of moves that are done, someone do a counter for how many backbreakers there were, because Roderick Strong was having a field day, doing all sorts of backbreakers, annihilating the back and ribs of Orange Cassidy. This was great fun, including possibly one of the scariest backbreakers I've ever seen.
Oh,
where Orange is on the top rope, Roddy's on the second, and he basically delivers a backbreaker across the top turnbuckle. But the way it unfolded and the way it landed, it looked so damn bad in the sense of it looked like it hurt so much. But just, holy heck, what a move.
It's so bad and looked like it hurt because it probably was so bad and probably very much did hurt because I was like, jeez. Also, I will say, because again, I'm sorry, I'm going to be that guy. I was way more invested in this title match than I was the TNT Championship because unlike the TNT Championship, there was a sense that Orange Cassidy could lose that title at any moment. And of course he did. So it always felt that the stakes were raised so much more. It brought in my investment and it did. I just don't want to see Blinking Orange Cassidy anymore hurt. Can he heal? Can he go on holiday? Can he be allowed to just go on holiday with
Surely
Mark?
his holiday is just sitting on the sofa.
Yes. At least that way it'd be healing.
So, and also a quote from Taz during this match to emphasize what I was saying about the backbreakers. One of Taz's, my favorite quotes of his of the night was as follows: "A steady diet of backbreakers."
Yes, that was right up there with a lot of Roddy Strong matches we've seen in Ring of Honor. When Ring of Honor was an actual tour de force, because that was one of his main offenses was the backbreakers and all the back-based because Next Strong isn't just an AEW thing, you know. Next Strong was there back in Ring of Honor as well. And speaking of Ring of Honor, Jeremy, I'm going to segue right over to Kyle O'Reilly.
Yeah, because after the match, whereby just to get out in the open as well, Orange hit a beach break, but Roddy was too close to the ropes, forcing the pin to be broken up. Orange then went for an orange punch, but instead Roddy hit him with a ginormous knee to the face, hit the end of Heartache, and got the win. as they are celebrating, suddenly we see someone enter the ring. It is Kyle O'Reilly, who we've not seen for a really long time at this point because he's had a major injury. I think he had to get surgery as well. And knowing all the history between him and Roddy, involving the Kingdom as well, just in general, the history, if you will, with all that's involved with the Undisputed Kingdom, there was sort of a bit of a moment. Then we got an embrace between Kyle and Roddy. Then there was kind of a step back moment, which led to Mike Bennett taking off his Undisputed Kingdom shirt, Roddy holding it out to Kyle, Kyle taking it, looking at it, looking like he's about to put it on. Then he stops and he puts the shirt on Roddy's shoulder, gets in close to him, whispers something in his ear, and then walks away. And now Bennett and Taven are looking a little bit annoyed at this, and Kyle O'Reilly is looking really emotional. I'm assuming not just because he's in the ring with his friends, but also because everyone is so happy to see him, quite frankly. You could genuinely tell it was a touching moment. But then Roddy kind of quells the annoyance from Taven and Bennett, and the way I read it was kind of like, no, don't worry. Give him time. Like, this isn't a no, it's a not, it almost like it's not no, it's a not yet type thing.
It feels like a callback to the Undisputed era over in NXT, because Roddy Strong himself did something along the lines of this when he wasn't a member of the Undisputed era. Then they had that match with... it
was Pete Dunne, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Pete Dunne. And that's when he turned on Pete Dunne and joined the faction. Now, it could go both ways. It could either go that eventually we will have Kyle turn into a damn dirty, dirty boy and he's going to join the Kingdom, or he's trying to get Roddy to move away from the faction and join him. Because we've had this with this entire bunch of characters from Ring of Honor. Well, even before that, I think PWA as well. From PWA to Ring of Honor, from Ring of Honor to NXT, from NXT to AEW. It's always been about this band of people. We've had Kyle O'Reilly versus Adam Cole in the Tokyo Dome at a Wrestle Kingdom for the Ring of Honor Championship. Each and every member has strayed away and had their own rivalries. We had Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly again, I think, in NXT.
They used to be a tag team as well. They were Future Shock.
And remember how much that used to tear up at Roddy Strong? That's why I'm saying this is a callback.
Yeah. This has probably got this is probably going to be one of the longer build stories I think we've got this year, which
absolutely,
obviously it's all dependent on what Kyle's health is like. We don't know if he's actually cleared to return yet. Maybe he's just going to be on television to sort of be in the mix with things. We don't know the story yet as to where he stands in general, for want of a better phrasing. So we will see how that unfolds accordingly. Next up, it was FTR v the Blackpool Combat Club. Now, there is a lot you could say about this match. This was really good fun. This is following on from the tag match draw that they had on Dynamite a few weeks ago. One of my favorite things about this match actually wasn't about the match itself. It's the fact that Mox and Claudio came out wearing the Road Warriors shoulder pads or things akin to that. And in the Greensboro Coliseum, like, seeing them wearing that, it's just like, oh my God, this is so good. Yeah. Like, it's so good.
It's obviously a callback to the NWA days of the Legion of Doom being the Road Warriors, but also bizarrely a callback to Sting, because when Sting started in wrestling, he started in a tag team with the Ultimate Warrior as pretty much a knockoff callback to the Road Warriors themselves. They had the face makeup. That's why Sting even had the makeup. Same with the Ultimate Warrior. In a weird, bizarre way, it was a little wink and a nod to Sting, to which I said to myself when I watched this match, it's just a shame that Mox and Claudio didn't have face makeup that not necessarily said Sting, but could be a wink and a nod of the nature towards which Sting first started out, because they're all in black. So there's the Sting colors right there anyway. But also, you got how he started out in the first place as a bodybuilder with Jim Hellwig, and then the two of them entered wrestling together. Because Sting started as a heel as well. People forget that.
It's a very fair point. This match, now this is pretty good. I've got a lot of notes written down about this match, but this match was still a bit weird. It's like I enjoyed their match on Dynamite, but there was just something about this. And I don't know whether it's just because the show would kind of be going at a bit of a breakneck pace up to this point. We'd had some really good matches, but even in the crowd, there was just notable points of silence. And it wasn't the silence that they didn't care. It was kind of silence of, right, we need to just kind of catch our breath for a bit, just take in what we're seeing. Because it was a really good match. And to note sort of some of the things I've written down, the BCC were in total control early. There was like a tag to Cash and whatnot, and kind of a bit of striking exchanges. And ultimately, it's Cash Wheeler that's being worked on. Dax came in for some offense and then got sent into the ring post and seemingly got clocked in the face by Mox, which led him to them bleeding. Which,
that was the weird thing. Mox didn't bleed once, not in the whole match, and wasn't the first one to bleed in the first place. It was Dax the Axe.
Very much so. There was a mental moment, and I still can't figure out how this happened, where I think Claudio was about to be hit by an equivalent of a doomsday device by FTR, and he somehow power slammed Dax while about to be in a doomsday position.
There was so many transitions there and so many callbacks. I'm trying to narrow it down. The best one they did was when Mox and Claudio did their own variation of the Doomsday device, which I've got underlined in my notes here, but with a difference. And it seemed safer. It seemed safer than when the Road Warriors did it. But the twist being, Mox has got the guy on his shoulders. And instead of starting...
I know what you're going to say now. Yeah, it was really good.
Instead of starting on the top rope, Claudio runs from across the ring, leaps onto the turnbuckle, and then, instead of doing a lariat or a overbody and basically just dropping the poor guy on his head, he uppercuts him in one fluid motion.
Yeah.
It was incredible to watch. And if Mox and Claudio ever does any more of this, I would love to see that as their actual signature finish, because that was incredible to watch.
Completely agree. So to try and sum up the ending, as it were, because again, this match was really good fun, but there was just kind of a weird air about it. I can't put my finger on it as to why I can't articulate what I want to say. But the end sort of just came suddenly when it's like we went from like second to fourth gear, like in an instant. And Cash did a dive to the outside on Claudio, but Claudio countered that with a European uppercut. During this time, Mox and Dax were fighting in the ring, and I believe that Mox nearly got pinned if it hadn't been for Claudio breaking up said pin. Mox then applied his Bulldog choke, which we've seen him do many a time and whatnot. And Cash, we can see, is trying to get in the ring, but Claudio's got his foot, and he's trying to kick him away and whatnot. And I was loving this part. It's like, this is so good. Like, he's fighting desperately to get to his partner. He's able to get Claudio off of him, and just as he's about to dive in and break up the submission, Claudio comes flying in, does a rear naked choke of his own, turns over so Cash is nowhere near him, and ultimately Dax, I can't remember if he actually tapped out, I think he just passed out, but the ref calls for the bell, BCC win. And this was very much a statement tag team match. I really enjoyed it. It might also just be because of the caliber of matches we had all night. It was definitely not match of the night for me. Really, really good. But what this has done is cement Claudio and Mox as a really formidable tag team going forward, which, as we will touch on before we conclude this podcast, there is a very logical reason for that.
Indeed. I love this. I never found it really weird. I found it as pretty much the overall overriding thing I've had for this entire card was it seemed like a callback to the old NWA days of work rate wrestling. Or Triple H era NXT card, because Triple H loves NWA as well. I'm trying to remember my point. There is one thing we can take away from this. Again, and I say this each and every time, Dax, if he ends up ever becoming a singles wrestler, that is a fantastic pedigree work rate wrestler right there in the making.
I want to see Mox and Dax so badly in one-on-one.
the chemistry between him and Mox was
Yeah.
incredible. I would love to see them two in the ring again with no tag teams. Just
do you remember when was it? It might have been an Owen Hart tournament match a few years back. Do you remember when it was Dax v Cash?
Yes, that was good as well.
That was so good.
Yeah,
they're both really good singles wrestlers.
I think Dax won that match and went on to do other matches in there, and he just proved his worth there as well. Dax, out of the two of them, no offense to Cash, but Dax in particular, that just seems to have that little bit of something in him. Like that guy needs a rocket strapped to him at some point, and he needs a singles title in his career because he can hold his own. He's great.
Even in the 6-man tag match on Dynamite, when those two were like when Mox and Dax were going 1-on-1, there's something there, and I really want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see. Whatever you think about the guy, I think that Dax has it, and he has it in spades. And sometimes that's forgotten about because he's in a tag team. But if they ever do break apart, Dax needs a rocket strapped to him. He really does.
Next up on the show, it was for the AEW Women's World Championship. It was Timeless Toni Storm defending against Deonna Purrazzo. There was also a small delay to this match due to the amount of blood on the ring canvas, which they had to then remove. But that aside, fun thing we got to begin with, Deonna comes out first, and one thing that had been teased by Toni Storm going into this was that we were going to see the old Toni Storm again. And we did, via Mariah May, who literally came out dressed as Toni Storm, and the resemblance was pretty uncanny until they did a close-up, and it's like, whoa, hang on, what?
I'll make this point very quickly, and I think you might agree. They revealed it too early. She should have gone straight to the ring without the camera zooming in on her. She should have stormed straight to the ring and basically square off of her. Maybe even soften Deonna up, because this is going to lead to another point we both agree on. That she should have softened her up, and then we have the reveal that, oh no, that wasn't Toni at all. And then we get Toni's actual entrance because Deonna is not a babyface. And all of her swagger, all of her posture, her entire arsenal just screams heel. And she was an incredible heel in TNA. If you're going to artificially have her be a babyface, this should have been how they did it. They should have had Mariah come in the whole time, do the Toni Storm thing, have people like scream, and while they're trying to soak it in, oh Christ, that's not her. But in the meantime, she's just like, because Mariah isn't a softie at all. Mariah is also a very capable wrestler in her own right.
Yeah.
She should have softened her up. And then maybe, just maybe, there would have been a little smidge of sympathy towards Deonna. Maybe.
Possibly, yeah. I wonder how long they could have gotten away with that for, but I do agree with you that the roles in general in this storyline, it's something we've discussed off air between ourselves, that so look, this match was all right, but in the grand scheme of things, the tag match from the pre-show should have been here. The women's tag, because this match, it just wasn't that great. And it's nothing against the wrestlers, it's just the circumstance and everything surrounding it just didn't lend itself well. I will say, and this kind of plays into some stuff that happens in the media scrum, I think Mariah May is potentially a far more interesting character playing the role of quote-unquote old-school Toni Storm.
Do you think she's the Mickie James to Toni Storm?
100,000,000%. And
I've got that vibe as well.
In the media scrum, Toni actually said, like, you can go to my old storage locker any time and get any of the clothes. Like, you did a fantastic job. So it's the first time that Mariah's been praised by Toni. And from a character point of view, being a super fan, that's going to be like, I have to be her all the time. I've got to be this way. I think it's a great idea, and I think it could lead somewhere. But yeah, it's like one of the first game changer moments in this match was, but the action sort of ended up in a corner, and the referee Aubrey Edwards kind of got caught in the crossfire. She got caught in the corner, not hurt, but she couldn't see what was going on. And there was like a mule kick from Toni, and that kind of led to a little bit of some exchanges and whatnot. But ultimately, Deonna was able to get back into the match. Things go back and forth. Deonna is then able to get some offense on Toni's arm because she uses the Venus de Milo as a finisher. During this time, Toni's able to sort of get some work on Deonna's legs, as it were, because I will say, I like the fact that her ankle lock is called the breaker leg. It's a very nice little wink and a nod.
Yeah.
So Deonna's got an arm bar applied, and she's going to grab the other arm for the Venus de Milo, which at this point would be the conclusion of the match. At this point, Luther then gets up on the ring apron, who had been involved a few moments earlier, kind of catching Storm, doing the usual thing. And the referee is distracted. At this moment, we see Toni, we literally see her tap. So we've had a visible tap out that the ref has not seen because ref has been distracted, pardon me. Then Mariah gets up on the apron, calling Deonna to then break the hold and attack Mariah, which then leads Toni Storm to then, during the distraction, hit a Storm Zero. Luther jumps down, ref turns around, 1, 2, 3, match is over.
I don't like... Sorry, yeah. I'll put my point here. What I don't like about this match, it's a typical AEW heel women's championship match. We've seen this before. We've seen this multiple times. We've seen this when Serena Deeb's had a match, work rate girl as she was. We've seen distraction finishes. We've seen this countless times with Britt Baker when we've had distraction finishes with Reba or Jamie Hayter. We've seen this with Saraya, with ironically Toni Storm or Ruby Soho. It's a by the numbers heel women's championship match, and that's why I couldn't get behind it. Character stuff notwithstanding, Toni continues to absolutely bring forth the big bisexual energy, and I'm basically here for my tribal chief. But I've seen this match countless times, and that's my main complaint about all of this. We've seen it so many times. One assumes that come that big business show, the women's division as a whole is going to have the biggest shakeup, as it were. It's going to have to, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of obvious how, and even like apparently on Collision, Serena Deeb did a promo kind of implying she's the final boss of AEW in terms of like video game stuff. So you hear the word boss, you kind of draw easy links, and even during the post-show media scrum, Toni kind of said, look, regarding the big business show, just come out with the surprise. Like, just say it. Stop dawdling around it. And then she did a joke about Wendy Rector being there and facing her and stuff. Which, good fun, but it's just like, they're kind of all but saying it at this point. Yeah. So, and I think we were saying this off air to ourselves, it's like, where's Britt Baker? Not seeing them in forever. Jamie Hayter must hopefully be healed soon. It's like, there's a lot of potential big players for this women's division to suddenly just get elevated tenfold, but we've just got to wait a few more weeks for it. To risk bringing in the other company into this, I made a point in our WhatsApp group when we prep for this stuff. We have our WhatsApp group, and I made a point in saying in SmackDown that's just gone, I didn't realize we had 2 women's segments in a row. I didn't notice at all. And that's the big difference between currently the way WWE is doing things as opposed to AEW. If AEW does something, they go, hey, look, you've got 2 women's matches in a card. Okay, one of them's in the pre-show, but you got 2 women's matches. Aren't we great? WWE is like, they're wrestlers. They're wrestlers. You've had a women's match, and then you've essentially got a women's segment. None of you noticed they were women. You watched 2 segments. And that's the way it should be, because regardless of gender, and I do want more inclusion of the female non-binary genders, I'm all there for it. Sonny Kiss, Nyla Rose, doesn't matter where your backgrounds lie, where your origins were, more inclusion, I'm all for it. We should be in a place where we don't notice these things. Because if we don't notice these things, the inclusion worked. Exactly. For want of a better phrase, it should just be a normalized thing. Yes, exactly. So from that match, and again, just the way it's worked out, it didn't click for me. It didn't click for you. It's just the circumstances. But like we say, in the coming weeks, things are likely going to change quite a bit. But then, Konosuke Takeshita, Will Ospreay, Don Callis on commentary.
I'm gonna be This is just the swearing edition of Jeremy on the show, but unfucking believable and insane. This match was mental. This was a fantastic showcase for both men. This is Will Ospreay's debut as an AEW roster member, which I wish AEW would be clearer about, because if he's had 3 matches in AEW before, I take that to mean this is not his debut. 3 singles matches. He's been in trios matches, but anyway, that aside. This was fantastic. It was out of this world how good these two work with each other. It's so damn good. The biggest turning point of the match, just to kind of go over some beats and then we can elaborate more and such. The biggest turning point was Will hitting a massive sort of roaring elbow, if you will. And they teased that the match would have to be stopped because Takeshita was on the ground. His hands were like contorted and stuff like that, like stiff. Really kind of teasing this might get stopped. And then Will does some kind of like, oi, get up kicks. Like just lightly tapping his face with his feet and whatnot. Takeshita stands up and hits 3 absolutely almighty knockout elbow shots on Ospreay, which every reaction from the crowd was just getting louder. You could just, this visible thing of, what the hell am I seeing? Just absolutely insane. Takeshita is encountering the hidden blade with an elbow of his own. So fantastic stuff there. He then falls into a cover. This is shortly afterwards this happens. He just falls into a cover, which is only covering one of Ospreay's shoulders. And Ospreay kicks out just by having to roll his shoulder up. Like in the most almost desperate, I have no energy to do anything else way. And it was damn perfect. Then they got into 5th gear.
Didn't they just? Oh my lord! I only had like 3 notes here, and the reason why I've only got 3 notes is because I drank in the match.
Yeah,
like for the same reasons I mentioned Danielson and Kingston. This was another strong style match. Yeah, this was very much a showcase of what Ospreay could do, and it elevated Takeshita. Again,
so
a man,
so.
Would you believe, a man who defeated Kenny Omega needed enhancing? And yet, here we are. This was a strong showing from both of them. My main things was, before the match started, while they were doing their entrances, I said I was expecting a pure strong style bout, followed by a callous screw job. That's the shocker. We didn't get it.
Even the announcers said it. They literally said one of the things I liked most of all was the fact that Don Callis didn't get involved.
Yeah. I will tweak what I said here, but basically I said the match is delivering, but I can't help but feel that it should have been saved for a bigger occasion, because this felt way bigger than just an introductory match or just an exhibition match between 2 guys. This felt big time. And then both men are incredible and should fight again for a title.
100%. So I mentioned the match then got into 5th gear because there are a few things we should talk about here. One in particular, which we'll get to in a second. But I mentioned that Takeshita sort of countered the hidden blade with one of his own. We had that cover moment. The next big moment was one where I legitimately shouted so loud someone else had to come and check on me in the room because I thought I'd seen a murder.
Yes.
This is when the way to sum this up is both men are kind of on the top rope area.
I knew you were going there.
And the intention by the look of it was to do a brain buster on the turnbuckle, which you've seen sort of variety of people do. You've seen the likes of Sami Zayn do it, others and whatnot. Something went a bit AWOL here. And essentially, we didn't get a brain buster. We got a lower back buster and Will nearly being spiked on his head.
Yes, nearly or actually did. But also, as he went down, his lower back clearly caught the cabling. They're not ropes, they're cables. You could actually see the tears in the coating, and you could see the metal in some parts during the Dax FDR and Blackpool Combat Club match. You could actually see the bits of metal like in the coating. As he came down, you could literally see him going bong, bong, bong down the ropes. Yeah. And the actual physical lacerations and whatnot, shown from that. Like, he was proper injured by that. And I really felt it.
Yeah, Will showed off a little bit of it again during the press conference, being like look at this thing. And you could just see this giant discoloration on his back, and part of you like, I'm so glad you're all right, but it's like, oh my god, you cannot get injured in your first match, please.
That was one of 2 times during those ropes, and the commentary team even brought it up. The other time being when Orange Cassidy got dropped directly onto them, where he was like, these ropes are nothing to joke about. They're really not. You could see the actual physical damage it's causing its wrestlers.
Literally. So then, ultimately, the way this somehow concludes and how Will Ospreay somehow is still standing, we get to a point where everything is being thrown left, right, and center by both. There's a moment when Will goes for an Oz cutter springing off the rope, and Takeshita turns that into a spinning blue thunder bomb, which looked just freaking almighty, quite frankly. It was insanely good. Ultimately, to get to the finishing stretch, Will hits the Tiger Driver 91. The pile driver that you saw him spike Kenny Omega with in Toronto, which, having been there live, I genuinely thought, again, I saw a murder, so there's a pattern going on here. But he does that and then follows up with a hidden blade for the win. Absolutely unbelievable match.
Which, by the by, if you've ever seen a New Japan match, if you ever see Ospreay do the hidden blade with the elbow pad still in place, you know that something's going to kick out. So it builds to him eventually taking that elbow pad off and then doing it again, which is exactly what happened here. So I never really bit when he first did it, because people expect hidden blade done, clean out. No, there's a build up to that.
But after the match, we kind of got a moment of respect between Takeshita and Will. You could tell both of part of you was kind of wondering, are they kind of going, hey, you okay? Yeah, just about you. Yeah, my back's a bit buggered, but yeah, sure. But then they kind of do a proper show of respect, like bowing to each other, as it were, like really, really cool moment. Then they cut to the entrance ramp and we see Kyle Fletcher walking down. There is a lot of history involving Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. Will Ospreay actually elaborated on some of this during the post-match media scrum, but the crux of it is they've known each other for a long time. During the pandemic, both Fletcher and Mark Davis used to live with Ospreay, so they lived with each other, kind of came up through the UK Indies, were all part of United Empire when they were all in Japan. And there's a moment, and at this point, the announcers say, I've just found out, this Wednesday, we're going to see Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher wrestle one-on-one, to which I thought, freaking amazing. How is Will Ospreay going to wrestle this Wednesday? Was my immediate thought.
Teasing the, is it even dissension? I don't know. We all felt it, and the commentary brought it out, which means there must be a seed of doubt being planted there, where who's going to turn on who? Because Ospreay is clearly a babyface.
Yeah, no one's going to boo him.
No, and from his own behavior, he's clearly the babyface here. So who is going to start the turning? I mean, obviously Callis is going to get involved because it's Callis. But who's the one who's going to do it? Who's going to portray? Kyle Fletcher seems a logical choice. Also, Takeshita got his own entrance. He didn't get the Don Callis entrance.
And his own music. He didn't just have brown noise.
Yeah. God.
But what I didn't mention though is that Fletcher came out. There was kind of a stare down. That we got a big embrace between Fletcher and Ospreay, and then, like you mentioned and alluded to, we got kind of the symbol of the United Empire being displayed by both Ospreay and Fletcher. So it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know how long Mark Davis is out for, because I think he had a wrist injury from last year, if memory serves. It wouldn't surprise me if we ultimately get an AEW equivalent of United Empire once Davis is back in the fold. So it may be having to wait a bit longer, but yeah, that's the direction we're definitely going in.
Absolutely. And also, Mark Davis, people talk about how Kyle Fletcher's becoming the standout. He's winning titles and stuff like that. Mark Davis is literally like blossoming as a individual guy as well. He did a brilliant turnout. I can't remember which tournament it was. Was it the New Japan Cup?
Quite possibly, yeah. But yeah, Dunkzilla's great. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's great. So both of these guys can work great as individuals. I'd love to see more of Ozzy Osbourne. Aussie Open. That's an entirely different faction. Aussie Open actually have a proper run in AEW. Don't hide him in Ring of Honor. Like a proper run in AEW. We're going to, as a consequence, we will bring. I'm going to bring this up now because we're talking about obviously Aussie Open. Because of Sting retiring, Tony Khan did announce at the press conference.
Well, tell you what, we've got one more match, so hold that thought actually, because I think that might lead to a different discussion. But yeah,
right, go on then.
That's cool.
Yeah, but Aussie Osbourne. Edit this point and let's move on.
No, John, I'm not going to edit it, but I'm going to say this. You mentioned Aussie. I do have a question for those in attendance. Not that many people are already going to, who were in attendance may watch this, as it were, but just genuinely, I ask this. When a Japanese man and a British man are wrestling each other, why do a chant of Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi?
I don't know. It's so weird.
Yeah, it really is. It really freaking is. That's my notes about that. So the final match we need to talk about is for the World Heavyweight title. This being Samoa Joe v Swerve v Hangman. Now, you can already see when everyone's making their entrance, of which Swerve got the dance troupe again, so really, really good stuff. But Swerve and Hangman are just ready to destroy each other, quite frankly. But the match actually starts off with Joe taking it to everyone. But soon after, it becomes a game of tactics, trying to take opportunities of who can perhaps get a sneaky pin or a decision and whatnot. And that's how a lot of this played out. One of the bigger moments of the match... Oh, go on.
No, go on. Carry on.
One of the bigger moments of the match was Joe being double power-bombed from the middle rope, meaning that Swerve and Hangman actually teamed up together for a moment. And there was a moment after when they looked at each other and just kind of had that look of, oh, you bastard. Great stuff.
I've got literally, it goes from one page to the other page on my notes. But you've literally just succinctly said what I was about to say anyway. My main concern in this match was we were very much continuing the feud between Swerve and Hangman. I can't do words anymore. With Joe as the third wheel. And it became literally the equivalent of alpha male dominance. Because who's got the biggest dick? It literally was, because it was like, right, you two little pricks. I know what my role is in all of this. You two are barking at each other. But hey, guess what? I'm still here, bitches. Bang, blam, bam. That was Joe's place. Joe is the world heavyweight champion. He should be the top of the pecking order of all this. And he made sure to try and assert his dominance in this match. It could have easily become, you take Joe out early, have them two just fight each other, bring Joe back in. Some reason, lol, Joe wins. But the biggest storytelling in all of this is, as you brought it up, the fact that Swerve and Hangman, for that brief fleeting moment, were forced to actually double team against Joe. And the look that they gave each other immediately following that is a smorgasbord of visual storytelling. These are two people who can't stand each other, who don't like each other, have literally done some horrible, despicable things to each other. But for that one fleeting moment, there was a weird sense of kingship. And they knew it. And they told that story with one look. And you could see the gears postulating in both their heads. That was a brilliant moment in the whole match. I'm going to say this now, coming out of this match, Hangman Page is a heel, Swerve is a babyface. The final nails on both those coffins were banged into place with this match. We ended up with very much a babyface Swerve and very much a heel Hangman. There is no doubt anymore. Those are the roles those two have.
Indeed. So in terms of how other elements of the match played out, Joe actually had to sort of save his title multiple times. There were multiple moments where the match was about to finish and he was the one to break up the pinfall. So that was kind of a fun dynamic to see. There was a muscle buster attempt on Hangman. In fact, there was a muscle buster on Hangman, which allowed Swerve to then hit a double stomp on Joe immediately after, then hit the house call on Joe. So Joe is out for the count, but Swerve doesn't pin him. Instead, he puts his eyes on Hangman and waits broodingly. Then hits the house call on him, but only gets a 2. So already that's a moment of, you misjudged there, Swerve. You misjudged it. This leads a short time later to Hangman being thrown out the ring. Swerve is able to hit a big DDT on Joe, followed by a 450 splash. He goes for the cover, and Hangman he does ultimately pull out the referee and just actually pulls him out the ring. So the ref has to take an almighty landing on the outside, which is a very fun thud sound, as it were. Which then leads to Hangman hitting Swerve with the belt. Not once, but twice, Swerve ultimately ending up on the outside of the ring. Hangman then hits 2 buckshot lariats on Joe. Another referee comes down. Joe kicks out. Hangman's apoplectic. He goes for a third, but instead Joe applies a Coquina clutch, which Swerve breaks up by doing a Skye Twister press, which looks so damn good. Then, this is kind of one of the big moments that you're alluding to, because Nana gives Swerve his own crown, as it were, that he normally wears to hit one of his opponents with. Swerve takes a moment and then throws it back to Nana, basically going, not doing it like that. There's then a Coquina clutch from Joe, which is reversed into a pinfall attempt. And the way this pinfall is interrupted is by Hangman effectively, I say, stopping the ref. He stopped him by literally lunging at him, turning him over, and doing a ground and pound attack on him.
Yeah.
He literally attacked the referee with complete authority over his own senses.
And then dumped him out underneath the ropes and landed to the floor as well, at which point the original referee starts stirring.
This then leads to the conclusion of the match. Joe tries to go for a muscle buster, but Swerve manages to kick him away, as it were, leading to Hangman hitting a buckshot lariat on Joe. But then Swerve, from the corner, which looks really damn impressive, hits his own buckshot lariat on Hangman, follows it up with a JML driver, goes to the pin, but Joe breaks it up and does a half and half suplex on Swerve, really kind of knocking him for 6 and stunning him. Joe then applies the Coquina clutch on Hangman, and you can see Swerve trying to crawl over, but he's not entirely with it because he's had his bell rung a bit. And then Hangman taps. And what commentary then points out was, now, did he tap out because he was in the move and couldn't get out? Or did he tap out to prevent Swerve from becoming champion? And that little wrinkle of detail, it's like, oh, so good. Chef's kiss.
It's fantastic. And which I ask you the question, Jeremy, what do you think?
I think ultimately it's going to be he did it to prevent Swerve from winning because he realized this would guarantee the moment. It's like throughout the match, Hangman changed. And the priority was just Swerve must not become champion. It wasn't necessarily about him winning the belt, but that's like a fun little addition if it does happen.
I'm in full agreement with you. I literally wrote in my notes, Hangman did this to deprive Swerve because this whole thing started off with Swerve saying, "You're not hungry enough. I am. I will do what you failed to do." And Hangman denied him that. And this whole match has been built up with who's got the biggest dick or who is the biggest dick. At the end of this match, we know who has both the biggest dick and is the biggest dick. He ain't called Hangman without a reason.
There you go. And folks, that was the final match that we need to talk about because we've already talked about the main event. So this pay-per-view was just a damn good show, pretty much top to bottom, sans the moment and elements that we've discussed. In terms of post-show notes, just to kind of touch on those slightly, and you were alluding to this earlier before I cut you off, Matty, but in terms of the tag titles, it was announced by Tony Khan during the media scrum the tag titles are now vacated, and because in America it's that old thing of March Madness, there is going to be a tournament in the month of March, which we're obviously in now, so I don't know why I'm implying we're still in February, but there's going to be a March Madness sort of themed tournament for the tag team titles. So in terms of tag teams getting their opportunity, alluded to it earlier, Moxley and Claudio seem like a good shout. Depending how things go, I know you were going to allude to it, maybe we'll get Ospreay and Fletcher perhaps as a potential combo to challenge from a Don Callis family perspective. We're going to get a tag title tournament, which I'm really up for, especially if it ends up being half as good, if not better potentially, than the Continental Classic that we got in December.
Now, I've got a feeling that we've had this tournament before last year. I think they basically reunited Swerve with Keith Lee like a mere month after the two of them broke up in the first place, which is like, that's not what you do. But in this tournament, they literally just paired chalk and cheese people together. And I'd love to see what they do with this. Having said that, I'm in full agreement. Mox and Claudio, put them together. Hey, wouldn't it be really tasty if we had Kingston and Danielson?
Can you imagine?
Wouldn't
Talk about
that
spicy.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure we had this around this time of year last year. So it's just that the circumstances at this point was you become the number one contenders for the championships, whereas this is for the championships. So the stakes have raised a little bit. I think this all ended beautifully in a nice little bow. I mean, it was the obvious way it was going to go. I literally said in my notes, and I kept quiet until now, basically said, doesn't it really suck to be Darby Allin to defend a title? You know you're going to lose regardless.
In some ways, but he's also part of a history-making thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sometimes the way I sum that up. But either way, this pay-per-view was so damn good. We've gone for nearly 2 hours talking about it, so that's how much we've had to say about it and wanted to talk about it. But Matty, before we close out, any other additional thoughts you want to convey out there that you haven't had a chance to say already?
I think we pretty much covered it all. I mean, one other thing that needs to be conveyed as well is not only did we have the March Madness tag thing, not only did we have
Fletcher Ospreay,
Fletcher Ospreay. We've also been given the news that Hangman Adam Page may be taking a sabbatical for the next several months. So
I had not heard that. Okay.
I literally just saw that as an article that came out during the press conference that he may be taking a sabbatical for the next few months. So he's pretty much out of the picture if we're to believe that. But also, one thing that we saw from a visual cue is it also felt that Revolution was kind of an end of an era because
I'm glad you mentioned this. Because
all visual cues towards Dynamite showed all the new branding, which means we've got a brand new look going into this week. So AEW will visually be different. We've heard a rumor in innuendo that we may be getting an Okada this week. So there's
really? Okay, cool.
But also, of course, we've also got Big Business the week after that.
Where it may be boss time.
Where it may be boss time. Or it is Okada and those $2 signs for Okada.
Can you imagine?
They will riot in the streets, Jeremy. They will riot in the streets. That's all I've pretty much got to say there. That's pretty much it.
It's like you say, this obviously it's an end of an era from a Sting perspective, but this was also a statement show from AEW. Not perfect, as we've gone into, but a damn good show, quite frankly, and well worth going out of your way if you have checked out our entire review and discussion of this show, which, like we said, we've got about 2 hours. So thank you so much for listening and or watching. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your platform of choice. And if you're watching on YouTube and such, be sure to let us know in the comments what you thought of the show, or if we're talking absolute codswallop in terms of something that we have said. We'd love to know, quite frankly, because sometimes it's nice just to be told these things. Matty, before we go, anything you would like to make mention of as to where people can find you online as and if and when you do things?
Yeah, you can pretty much find me on X as Matty Boo Tweets. You can find me on both Threads and Instagram as Matty Boo Super. And more primarily, you can find me on Twitch under Matty Boo Twitches. Things are up in the air about what I'm actually streaming at the moment because I've got a few busy weekends ahead of me. But yeah, I've just finished Batman the Telltale series and I loved all of that. So
it's good fun.
That's all I got to say about that. So all of those places.
There you go. If you want to find me, easy ways to go to a link tree that I have, which is linktree/Giraffemy, Geraffemy, of which I will say the notes to the things that we've just been mentioning will be in the description of this podcast, all going well, if you want to find those very easily. I tend to stream Friday nights on Twitch from around 7 p.m. UK time, and I do a bunch of podcasts and stuff as well as and when I can. So those are the things to look out for on that. From us here at BunkaMania Wrestling, hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back very soon with another episode, and we know a potential topic we've got in the can for later as to what the heck do you do with Ring of Honor, so we might do that at some point soon. But from both myself, Jeremy, and from Matty, thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, take care and speak to you soon.
Toodles!